Hi, and welcome to Kitchen Chats. I'm Aimee Kandrac, your host, and today I am here with a new friend, Brian Thompson. And we are going to talk today about all of the paperwork that you might need to have, and not even just paperwork, but things that you can do to prepare in case an unexpected thing happens in your life. And usually I have guests when the opportunity arises join me here in my kitchen, but instead today Brian is not located near me and he is joining me via Zoom. Brian, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Amy, thanks for having me. I'm
Yeah.
excited to be here.
Yay. So, Brian, as you know, and as my listeners know, Kitchen Chats invites friends into the kitchen because when a major life event happens, I call my friends. We gather in the kitchen and we figure out the next steps, whatever those next steps might be. And I am wondering if you have a moment in your life that is a kitchen moment that you'd be willing to share with our listeners.
Wow, that's a great question. And actually, I do have a couple of them. We had a big family crisis. My dad had had an affair, and we were having a family chat. And I remember that being in the kitchen. We all sat down at our kitchen table. This is when I was, gosh, seventh grade? Yeah,
So
and
just a
it
couple
was,
years ago.
yeah, yeah. Yep. Um, and it's one of those moments you never forget, right? Yeah, I remember where I was sitting. I remember everybody surrounding the table. I remember the feelings, the anxiety, the trepidation, knowing we were having a family meeting because we didn't have family meetings. Um, Knowing that what something big was about to happen, and us sitting around the kitchen table and discussing it. It's very impactful.
It's
And
really
also, when my dad ended up having cancer, we weren't in a kitchen; we were at a restaurant. But still, the same
the same.
atmosphere of like being around food, being in a place where we could all sit down together and try to figure things out. So I love the idea of kitchen chats. Makes
Oh,
a lot of sense to me.
thanks. Well, it's where those really intimate conversations tend to happen.
Hmm.
And those sound like two really big events in your life, right?
Yeah.
They tend to change the course of what's next
Hmm.
whenever those
Yeah.
big things happen. So, thank you very much for sharing those with
Of
us.
course.
So, could you share a tiny bit of your background with us? Because professionally, that is why I have you here today.
Yeah. Well, my background is I was a tax lawyer for 10 years, and now I serve my own financial planning firm, Brian Thompson Financial, where I provide guidance and instruction for people who run mission-driven businesses, making sure that they are running an impactful and profitable business. And a part of that is having the financial planning background, certified financial planner, and being able to plan for things like taxes, estate planning, insurance, um, cash flow, all the things that you need to have a solid financial foundation in your life. And so that's what I do. I've been doing it for the last 6 years. I love it. Couldn't imagine doing anything else. My philosophy is preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, right? So we prepare the best that we can for things that are unexpected. And because they're unexpected, they're things that we probably can't anticipate, but we can try to build some sort of resilience around our financial lives and the lives that we share with others in order to make sure that we can get through those moments the best we can.
Thank you. I am so uh, grateful that there are people like you in the world who love to do these kinds of documents because it's not something that I'm personally like, oh, let's go get the wills done and
Yeah.
let's make sure we've got all of the life insurance taken care of.
Yep.
I've got it done, but I don't know if everybody does.
Oh, most people don't.
Most people don't. But when the kitchen chats happen, often, like I said a minute ago, like it changes the course of your life after that.
Right. Hmm.
And if you don't have those documents done ahead of time, I can imagine a lot of headache
Right.
and a lot of strain. So, what are some, like, what's the first tip you give someone who maybe yeah, what are your first tips that you give someone who says, I've got nothing. Where do I
Yeah.
start? What do I do? Because, like, we want them to not have extra hassles and headaches because when those kitchen chats happen and those kitchen moments happen, like, you have so many things to figure out.
And yeah, I tend to make sure that people come from a place that they know that we can talk about these things, right? So making sure that they have a safe space to say that there's no judgment around not having the things done or not having trouble getting your estate planning done. I feel like there are a lot of people that are into that don't want to think about death or don't want to think about disability. So they put these things off because it's scary to think about the worst things happening to you.
Yeah.
So we have to start from a place of saying it's all right. We are coming from a place of we want to make sure that you and your family are taken care of. So we start with the why. Why do you want to do this? Why is it important for you to take care of your family? Or why is it important for you to make sure that you have your house in order or that you leave a legacy? There's so many things that people have a motivation for that will then help them complete the tasks that seem very tedious and very hard to go through. If you start with the why of why you want to do it, we can then build the plan around that. And then once we have the why, we try to go to the places that they're most vulnerable. And for me, that's insurance and estate planning because you're more like, I think it's like you're 3 times more likely or 2 times more likely to become disabled than you are to die. Most people have life insurance, but they don't have disability insurance.
Really? I mean,
Yeah.
I know in my family that's likely because we're very accident prone, but
Yeah.
wow, I had no idea. 2 or 3
Yep.
times more likely to. So needing disability insurance is huge.
Right. Because your biggest asset is your earning potential, right? It's not your house. It's not your investment accounts. It's your ability to earn money for decades. And if you aren't able to do that, then you're in trouble, right?
And if you aren't able to do that, then you probably have a lot more expenses than you did before,
Correct.
too. Right?
Right.
Like your expenses are now things that you haven't even thought about.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
Things that you haven't thought about, things that you wouldn't normally pay for, right?
Right.
Whether it's additional help or additional care, additional healthcare cost, things that you don't anticipate. And most people's disability policy are through their work, where they're getting something like 60% of their income before tax. So we talk about the difference between paying a disability policy before tax or paying it after tax. So many nuances that I don't think people think about that really affects their situation.
right. Well, we're really fortunate that when my husband was in like the last few years of his residency, the medical school provided a life insurance planner who sat down with us. But we were young and healthy and nothing was going to happen. And now I'm thinking, gosh, we probably need to revisit this. And because our lifestyle has changed, our needs have changed. If something were to happen to us, we've got kids in college, we've got to pay for that. Are
Right.
we set up properly for that? And
Right.
this is the kind of stuff, it really overwhelms me a lot. And I don't know if I'm thinking it overwhelms a lot of other people. Otherwise, everyone would just have it
Right.
done, right?
You were not alone in the slightest.
Right. So, like all of the paperwork that needs to happen. So I can have the vulnerable conversation. That's something that I'm okay with. But finding the paperwork. So, what kind of paperwork do I need to have?
Yeah, there are people that set this up for you, right? You have an estate planning lawyer who makes sure that they have the proper documents, that they're worded correctly. All of that happens through an estate planner in your area, right? All estate planning laws are state specific. And so being able to talk with somebody in your area that can make sure that the documents that you need are in compliance with state law. Same with insurance companies. I suggest here's where a lot of people get in trouble is that there are people who sell life insurance as an investment. And that's how they make their money. It happened to my mom. I had a guy put her in a bunch of annuities, which she didn't need. So my suggestion is to make sure that you're keeping life insurance, and insurance is separate from your investments. And so you're invested in something like term insurance, where you're covered for the next 30 years while you build your wealth, growing your family and taking care of your kids. And then after that 30 years, you likely won't need it anymore, and you'll be wealthy enough that you can be self-insured. Rather than trying to do something like a permanent policy, there are these things called permanent policies that are whole life, variable life, universal life, that tend to be sold as investments.
No, that's
Sounds like
like,
you may.
no. I love how you can just rattle all of this off, and I am like, this is so crazy. Why?
Yeah.
It really overwhelms me a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm thrilled that there are people like you who can just talk about all of this. Like these are the things that you need. And again,
Right.
you're going to want to sit down with somebody who can specifically say in your area, this is what you need, and looking at what you have. So what about,
Well,
go ahead.
sorry, do you mind if I'm just
Please,
gonna, don't
please.
want to interrupt you, but I'm
No.
gonna comment to that comment about being overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
You're not alone. And I think this is the importance of having a financial planner. Yes, there are individual people that help you put the right documents in place, but there's somebody on your side that can actually take you step by step through what you need and the importance of what you need. So you're not trying to do insurance, estate planning, taxes all at the same time. You say, all right, so what is the next right step? What do we need to do first? What do we prioritize? All right, it's your disability insurance. We'll take care of the disability insurance. We'll get you a broker for that. We'll have you do the underwriting and all that. Great, we've done that. Now we get to life insurance. Get you to the right person to do that. Take you through the steps that you need. Take you through the amounts that you need. Great, we're done with that. Then we take you to the estate plan. Like there's somebody that can actually help you through it to make it not as overwhelming. Make sure that you're taking off little bites of the elephant rather than trying to swallow a whole.
Yeah. So I have two questions for you around this specifically. The first one is, it also sounds super expensive, right? Like what if you don't feel like you have a ton of wealth, where financial planning seems so out of reach, but that doesn't mean that your likelihood of needing disability insurance is going to change, right? Like
Right.
something is going to happen to all of us. I mentioned this before, like I was walking into the grocery store and hit by a car. Lots of stuff happens. This isn't just for like people who are doctors, right?
Right. Yeah, it's for everyone. And I get that it can be expensive, and there are different ways that people can get planning that is affordable to their circumstance. I always suggest going to a fee-only planner, somebody that is just accepting their fee from you, and that's how they get paid, because then there's no conflict of interest. But there are several fee-only planners that do one-off engagements, or do financial reviews, or do different types of engagements. My engagements are comprehensive financial planning, so we're longer-term engagements, and they're more expensive. But depending on your situation, you can find somebody that is a fiduciary, somebody that is required to plan in your interest, and somebody that can fit your budget based on what you need. It's just doing a little bit of research, and there are plenty of organizations like the XY Planning Network or NAPFA or the FPA that can give you the people that you need that may fit your situation.
Yeah. So what about, we haven't looked at our insurance in a couple of years, maybe, and something does happen. What are the next steps? Like so something happens and someone has not done this financial planning. What do you recommend they do at this point? Like,
Well,
hopefully they have regular insurance. I know they can go into the ER, they can get their care, but you can go underwater pretty fast
correct.
for medical
Yes.
bills and medical
And
expenses.
that's I did a stint as a bankruptcy attorney when I was first out of law school, and actually that was the biggest reason that people were in bankruptcy. It's because they had medical bills. Everybody thinks about it's credit card debt or loans or anything like that. No, it's people who had an unexpected emergency and couldn't actually afford the care, or maybe didn't have health insurance, were just in a situation. I forgot what the stat was, that like 60 or 70% of Americans are one paycheck away from bankruptcy, because most people don't have an emergency fund or don't have the ability to come up with cash quickly. So if you are in an unexpected situation where you have a medical bill that you can't pay for, then you're in trouble and you can easily go underwater. So
Oh,
this is why you have to prepare.
you have to prepare. We
Yeah.
received a medical bill this summer from, so a year ago, we live in an old house in an older neighborhood, and our daughter was home alone for the very first time overnight, and we had a bat get in the house.
Ah,
And she was closing her curtains, and the bat fell on her. Oh yeah, it was all the things. It was
yikes.
so she's, like, and it's, midnight, and we're out at the state. She calls my
Yeah.
mom, all this stuff. Anyway, you have a bat touch you. The protocol is you need to go to the emergency room, and you need to, if it has touched you, you need to get shots. And it's a series of 4 shots the first time, then you have to go back. I don't want to give people like
Wow.
the specific protocol because I'll get it incorrect, but it's like 4 different days over multiple weeks. But anyway, so we received the bill for the first set of shots. It was $18,000.
Right? Yeah.
And we have insurance. We didn't, that was, before the deductible, before all of that. It was,
Right.
I mean, I still don't have my
Mind
head
blowing.
around how this was a bat in the house. That doesn't happen to everybody, but it's
Yeah.
not like so incredibly, like it could happen to anybody, right?
Right.
And $18,000 for one tiny little incident.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know. I mean, you can go so fast.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you
Well,
talked about bankers, but yeah, go ahead.
I think we don't realize how expensive medical care is in the United States because we don't see the initial bill, right? Or we don't see the total bill because we only see what we're paying or what the insurance is paying, and we don't see the entire cost. And this could be an entire different discussion on the healthcare industry in the United States
Right.
and those types of things, which we don't have time for.
We
But
don't.
it's expensive.
It's
really
really,
expensive.
really expensive. It's really,
Yeah.
really expensive. So we mentioned like the first thing, which was like let's start that conversation. Call somebody, get everything set up. So once something happens, when do you, as that financial planner, want to get involved again? After there's been some kind of kitchen moment that is probably going to need
Yeah.
a change.
The thing that I love about my job is that I'm usually the first person people contact if there's a pregnancy or if there's a death or if there's a divorce, because I'm the person that is intimately involved with their financial situation and can be able to hold space for the emotional aspects of what's happening around that kitchen conversation. So I want to be the first person that you contact. I want to be the first person that you call, and we have, for my clients, we have a portal where we have all of your documents that you need organized. You have your insurance documents, your estate planning documents, your tax documents, so we can get at things quickly. We have a sense of where your cash flow is, like how much money you need a month. I want to be the first person you contact so we can plan immediately. Start trying to figure out how we're going to really work our way through whatever situation this is the best that we can. It's funny, like I do a lot of organizing, I do a lot of situating, and I think this is probably just because of my money history as well. But in these times of emergency, you already have enough stress. You're
Right.
already overwhelmed. You already have fear, anxiety, worry. Having then to find documents that are 15 years old, or that you haven't looked at in 4 years, having to find where they are, having to get things organized, it's just going to add more stress to you. So I always tell my clients, you need to make sure that things are organized and prepared now so you can easily find stuff and reduce as much overwhelm as possible when you're in that situation.
And not only reduce it for you, but the person who's maybe contacting you, Brian, right? Because that's probably not in every case your direct client, right? So something happens, there's a death, or there's an emergency, and we've got this disability
Right.
all of the sudden, and they're not necessarily in the case to be the one to contact you.
True. Right.
So
Family member or somebody.
So how do you like to set up, I'm forgetting the word now, like your main point of contact, your beneficiary, who like has your power of attorney, who has all of that kind of stuff set up for you? What are your suggestions on, making sure that's set up correctly, making sure the person who is that person is notified or not notified?
Yeah, I mean, those people are specified on each individual document. So your power of attorney for healthcare, your power of attorney for finances, whoever your beneficiary is, the trustee of a trust. All those people are specified in your documents. And they should know that they are that person, right?
They are that person.
And it's interesting that some states don't require that person be notified. From what I understand, I know that Illinois does, but I'm not sure about Indiana. So, like being able to make sure to notify that person and say, this is who you contact in case of emergency. I also there's a document called What My Friend Should Know, or What My Family Should Know,
Oh,
that has an outline of all the things that you have. Right? I know that people think, oh, well, this is dangerous. It is sort of dangerous if somebody gets a hold of this and knows where your assets are. But the point is that somebody who you trust can find everything that you own easily. All of your property, all of your assets, your points of contact for healthcare, for insurance, your estate planner, your insurance broker, your financial advisor, making sure that all those people are in one place that they can easily access if something does completely happen to you.
Oh, yes. And I agree, like that can be kind of dangerous, so to speak. On the other hand, if you have all of these things set up securely,
Right.
someone who finds this information out, like I can't just call you and say, hey, can you give me so-and-so's information? No,
Correct.
Aimee, you're not listed. I'm pretty sure you don't just get to have all of that information, right? Like there's still
Right.
protection just because you have one document that has it all listed. I love that idea of one document, especially because I know that I have some older relatives who, for whom I have been designated, as like the estate trustee and administrator and or second in line, but knowing where do I go for everything? What else do I need to know for all of this?
Right.
That's a huge tip. And I think that's something that today someone doesn't have all of these things set up already. Having that one piece of paper, they can take that step to say, okay, worst case scenario, here's where you get everything. Because you're going to have access to it if you've had a financial planner or not.
Here are my bank accounts, here are my investment accounts, here's my insurance policies, here are my people to contact for all of these things. Having all of those people listed out and as a great first step. If you don't feel like you can afford a financial planner, or don't feel like you can afford somebody else, being able to have something that you could show, that you could give somebody in case something happens to you is a great place to start.
Yeah, that is a really great place to start.
And there are different versions of this that you can find online if you just Google what my friends should know or what my family should know. There are different versions of this document that you can easily find and download, put in an Adobe spreadsheet, and email in a safe place.
Oh, that's great. And you can, I mean, I can't because I don't have a printer that works ever, but you could print it out, right? And like keep it, in a safe spot also.
Yeah, you could do both of those things.
It's probably a good idea to do both of those things at some point as well, right? I have had I don't know if opportunity, but I've been the executor before or the co-executor of things after, older relatives have died. And there's a lot that has to happen, right? There is so much that has to happen. And luckily for me, as the executor, I was still grieving, but it was for, like for my grandmother, and she was 100 years old. So while there is grief, there is, she was 100, right? So it's not quite as tragic and all of that other stuff. But a lot of times when there's just a lot of emotion. There's a lot of grief that can be going on. And are there ways that you see friends or extended family can step in to help with any of these processes? Or does it really just have to be the person who is designated?
It's usually the person that's designated. The great thing about estate plans is they can also provide a caveat that that person who is designated can then hire a professional to help. And that professional will then be paid out of the estate funds. I see this quite a bit, which I think makes the most sense, right? I get friends and family will be there for you and will be there to support you emotionally. But the nuts and bolts of the specifics of what needs to be done, you leave that to a professional, right? You hire, you delegate. So I think it's actually more important, especially in that estate plan, to designate who that person is, who you suggest as a financial advisor or your attorney or your insurance broker, making sure that they know who to go to for help. So I'm listed in several estate plans. If something happens to me, this is my financial advisor. This is who will have all the information. This is who you go to help you navigate administrating the estate. It's such a weird word. So yeah, hire a professional. I get wanting to hire a professional for the specific technical things that need to be done, and lean on your friends and family for the emotional support as you are grieving.
I really like that and appreciate that very much, especially because you do this all day, every day, right? Like you know the documents, you know where to find the documents, and you already have the network of people to know who you need to contact, right? So
and how to find people if I don't, right? If I need somebody in Indiana and I don't know anybody in Indiana, I have a network of advisors in Indiana I could call and say, all right, so how do I help this person in a specific situation? And everybody's situation is unique or different. There's
Of course.
some sort of nuance. So it's important to have a network of people, have a network of resources that you can use. So I don't need to know everything. I just need to know where to find it.
So we touched on this a little bit, but what about someone is like diagnosed with cancer? You mentioned, you're usually a first phone call with babies or death or divorce, but what about these big medical instances, which fall into the category that you mentioned before of disabilities?
Right.
But what if they don't have disabilities insurance set up already? Where do they start? Do they still just call you again?
Yeah. One of my favorite phrases of my client made me a sign that said, "We'll figure it out." Right. And it's again the concept of me not needing to know the answer, but knowing where to find it. And so if you don't have disability insurance, but you now have this terminal disease, having somebody to help you think through how to figure that out. And that's a really hard situation that I've thankfully never encountered yet, where people get a terminal disease that they don't have the health insurance or they don't have the disability insurance to prepare for. We make sure both in our disability and life insurance policies that if there's some instance like that, that they get a lump sum of money to help them through the transition of maybe working or going through care. I actually do have a client whose husband is terminally ill. Well, just was diagnosed.
I'm sorry.
And he's had to take time off from his business, right? He's the owner of the business, but luckily he has partners and employees that will help support him. But has to take 2 months off so he can care for his husband. And all of those things we work out, we have to plan for, and we figure out how to make it through the best we can.
Great.
But it's tough. If you don't have the right foundation, it's going to be that much tougher. But that's not to mean that you won't be able to figure it out and you won't be able to make something happen.
Right.
And that's why you have a professional to lean on to say, how can I do this? What can we do?
Yeah. What can we do?
We'll figure it out.
Oh, that's so nice to have that opportunity there.
Yeah.
So Brian, it sounds like you are super planner, organized all of the time. Do you feel like that has helped you when you've had these kitchen moments? Because you've been like, how does that make you feel in going into, okay, you found out your dad has cancer.
Yeah.
And were you ready for did you feel like, okay, well, at least I've got all my boxes checked around financial planning for my dad?
No, it's actually, I feel like it's the opposite. I was in these moments. The reason that I'm so organized now and so worried about people being prepared for the unexpected is because I've lived it. I've experienced it. My dad died, left my mom a lot of money that she had no idea how to deal with. And she was taken advantage from a financial planner. So she starts leaning on me and my older brother to help her figure these things out. And for a woman who never took care of the finances, who never really did anything with the money, having all of a sudden to figure out what she does and not being able to lean on the right people was traumatic for me and made me say, well, I'm not going to have this happen to anybody else, right? I'm going to do my best to make sure that I have the knowledge and the preparation to make sure that nobody else has to go through this situation like she did. And that's really why I got into financial planning. I was in law school, well, I was in college at the time when my dad died, transitioning into law school, and had to learn all about financial planning. And a part of it is just also my personality, right? I feel like I'm very much a control freak. And so being able to focus on those things that I can control and get organized and make sure something about just being clear and organized helps me feel better, helps me feel more secure. And so it's a part of my personality, but I've also experienced it. So I wanted to make sure that I could help people navigate this the best they could. Like I had to help my mom.
Yeah.
And that's why I am where I am.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. So do you have any other like big tips that you want to make sure, people have ready so that when those kitchen moments happen, you're like, okay, we talked about a lot of it, but like anything else that we haven't touched on?
I mean, I think we've touched on this tangentially, but making sure that you have a good network of people you can trust. I think that's super important. Friends, family that you're open with, that you talk about money with. money is still, for some reason, a taboo topic that we don't talk about. We
Right.
talk more about sex. We're likely to talk more with our friends about sex than we are about money.
Wow.
We need to change that conversation to make sure that people understand your financial situation in case something does happen to you. Um, and
Right.
people that you can lean on if something does happen to you, people that you can trust and feel like you can depend on. I think having a good financial network or a good social network is important. And then obviously the network of professionals, I think, is also important. Having somebody that you can go to that can help you through the technical and emotional aspects of grief or disability or death. Um, Having that network as well, and then being able to navigate yourself, make sure you're motivated to have that conversation. These are, as you pointed out, these are overwhelming, hard topics to discuss, but they are so important. And the more we put it off, the more danger we put ourselves in, and the more danger we put our family in. So
Right.
being able to really get in touch with yourself, what's holding you back, and why you want to do this, I think will help you navigate the conversations that you need to have with your friend network and your professional network.
Yeah. And I really appreciate those reminders. And I will say, as we were trying to figure out, okay, who do we go to? Who's going to
Hmm.
like do our estate planning? Who's going to do all of this? It was talking to friends a little bit to say, hey, who did you use?
Hmm.
Are there people who you trust in your network who you can call and or send a text and just say, we're thinking about, we're not even
Yep.
thinking about, we're making the next steps to like plan. Who have you
Yeah.
used? Do you have any suggestions? Using your
Yeah.
network to say who else are we gonna and then interviewing those people to say, yeah,
Hmm.
not so much, or I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of good
I,
steps with
I
that.
think interviewing three people, I love that point, right? Interviewing three people to make sure who's a good fit for you, because just because they're a good fit for your friends doesn't mean they're a good fit for you.
Right.
So getting some recommendations and interviewing them, seeing who's going to be the best fit for you is supremely important. And I was laughing because I still have clients who were clients with me for a couple of years and then they moved on, still emailing me. I just got an email this morning saying, hey, do you have an estate planner I can use? Right? It's having that network of people to rely on, to go to, I think is so important. And there's nothing wrong. Like we all need this, right?
Right.
Good to have that network.
Good to have that network, and knowing that your network is usually really happy to share, and if they aren't happy they
Absolutely.
won't share it with you. But
Yep.
I always love people who've been good in helping me. I'm always happy to share their information.
Compounding the kindness, making sure
Yes.
you're um, people want to help. People want to make sure that you're, especially if they love you and they're a part of your network. They want to make sure that you're taken care of as well.
Well, that is a great intro into the last two questions that I have for you today, Brian.
Sure.
And the first one of these last two is, when you have a friend who has had any kind of major life event, what is your favorite thing to do for them?
My favorite thing to do for them, you and I actually had a conversation about this on my podcast, is asking what they need, right? I feel like there are a lot of times when previous in my life, I would try to like just jump in and do things for them. And I've now realized the importance of really figuring out what people need in the first place. And it's a balance, right? You don't want to overwhelm people if they already have a lot on their plate, asking what their need, but being like, how can I best support you? It's my favorite question.
How
How
can I
can I
best
best,
support you?
how can I best support you? And if they don't know, I can offer suggestions. Can I make you dinner? Can I come over and sit? Do you need a hug? Um, but at least leaving it up to them to specify what they need and me being able to show up for them. Acts of service is my love language, so I love showing up for people if I can. But I need to make sure that I'm doing it in a way that is really for them and not for me.
Yeah.
And so being able to ask that question of how can I best support you helps keep perspective around why I'm doing it and the fact that I'm doing it for them.
So then the last question is, what is the best way that anyone has supported you when you have had any major
Oh,
life event?
like I said, my love language as acts of service. So people showing up and taking things off my plate, no matter what it is, whether it's dinner, whether it's helping me move. Uh, you know, I'm lucky enough. I'm right. We talked about at the beginning. I'm transitioning between two homes. I just bought a new place, and the new place is not done yet. And have the best boyfriend who can show up for me and say, all right, let me help you gather your stuff, um, and make sure that you're in the right place, you're in there safely. And coming to sit with me in this new Airbnb, all of those things are just so comforting to me, and they help make the entire experience better because somebody's there with me. I'm not alone.
You're not
And
alone.
I love people being able to show up in that way, and that's how I want to show up for other people. Let them know you don't have to go through this alone. I imagine that's the importance of what you do, right? Making sure that people feel supported and people feel comforted around the fact that they have people that can help them, people that are there for them and want the best for them.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah,
Brian, I really appreciate your time today. I appreciate all of your wisdom, and I hope that through this conversation we've at least made it easier for people to know that it's going to be hard, but having everything taken care of is really better in the long run.
right, right. I'm happy to be. I appreciate you having me on. Been such a pleasure, and I hope it was helpful too.
Thanks. Thanks so much for the time.
Talk to you later.